Dr. Anbu. If I can have my slide there. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank ICT Academy for giving Microsoft an opportunity to be here. And for me, it's a privilege to be here for two reasons. One, I come from Chennai, did my education in Chennai, so that was motivation for me to come back and talk to you about what we do here. And second, as an organization, we are very deeply involved in education. It's a very strategic area of focus for us. And therefore, opportunities like these to come back and talk about what we passionately believe in to transform education is something that we always count on. So it's, again, that's a second reason why it's a privilege for us to be here. Enlivening the workforce is the topic that I was asked to speak on. And it's something that Microsoft as a company grapples with every day as to how do we really take advantage of the next generation workforce that's coming in, transform them, and help them understand how they can contribute back to the success of our company. This is a very wide topic, so I just thought I'll keep the theme very simple and focus on two little things. One is, what are organizations really looking for from the next generation workforce? So what are the capabilities they look for? What are the traits they look for? And second, I thought I'll focus a little bit on our views of what the education system should be doing to create talent for the next generation workforce. So that's what we're going to focus on. I'll probably take about 10-12 minutes, and then we'll leave it open for questions towards the end of the session. Can I just go back to the previous slide? Yes, thank you. So, I think since morning we've been looking at the number of traits that are required for the next generation workforce. So I thought I'll just focus a few moments on saying, what are the traits that are looked for, or what are the changes that are driving the needs for the next generation workforce? And I'll just focus a few moments on that. Today, the economic growth that we see across the world, the global transformation that we see, the globalization of organizations and of the marketplaces that we see, has resulted in two things. It has resulted in a significant amount of wealth creation that has actually created more affordability. It's also created more aspirations and needs from the consumers. The second thing that it's also done is actually blurred boundaries between organizations and marketplaces. And those two have been, I guess, the most critical factors that has contributed the need for actually looking at a different kind of a workforce. So what are those needs that have actually come up? The needs are that the workforce today needs to be more agile. The workforce needs to now look at needs which are global in nature. The workforce now needs to look at constant innovation and sustained innovation that can actually go back and make the organizations more successful. And this innovation is actually coming from the need of actually intense competition. Today, competition is no longer local. Competition is completely global. So what you get as a goods and service in any part of the world is the same goods and service that you get in India or perhaps in any other marketplace. And therefore, when we have to look at organization requirements today, competition and innovation are the two major things that everybody focuses on. I believe yesterday there was a speaker who talked about several examples of innovation and competition, and I just thought we will table one thing, which was Microsoft alone. Now, for those of you who followed Microsoft for many years, we were a desktop company, and we were one of the best as far as desktop software is concerned. But over a period of time, significant shifts started happening in the industry. The shifts were people did not want to look at desktops anymore. People started looking at mobility. People wanted to access the same information, be productive anywhere on the move, on the go. And therefore, form factors started shrinking. There was a massive shift that happened from PCs to tablets to phones. We were very early in the game. For those of you who know, when we launched one of our software operating systems, we were the first ones to introduce tablets, but we didn't sustain our innovation on that. So as a company, what we had done was we innovated, but we didn't sustain the innovation, and therefore there was innovation that happened from other competitors that actually led to an explosion of a marketplace. So this can be a good example of how Microsoft actually did not catch the game on the innovation. But if you were to talk about other areas that Microsoft innovated on, I can give you several other examples that has helped us sustain what we've done. The other thing that's also happened now from an innovation standpoint is that innovation not necessarily happens within a workforce or within an organization. For those of you who followed acquisitions that happened in the last few days, WhatsApp. which has now been acquired by Facebook. An app that was created by a very small organization, a rapid pace of innovation, and now has become an acquisition target of a very large global corporation. And that's how innovation is starting to happen in the marketplace with the pace and agility. So we now need the workforce, and we also need the Gen Y now to be trained, to be aware and capable of addressing the needs of innovation of these corporates now. Technology advances are also making things more affordable. Scale and quality is bringing down costs. Scale and cost coupled with access is also making aspirations grow. And therefore, when we link the requirements of the competition, the globalization, the technology advances, this is now becoming a very lethal requirement that organizations look for, and workforces are going to be key for that. So now, having understood where the trigger is actually happening, let's look at what the 21st century educators or 21st century learning systems need to look at. Now, learning systems, therefore, cannot look at the traditional models anymore. Learning systems need to take advantage of the booming technology availability that's available in the industry and equip the students to actually learn at their own pace and actually look at research-based learning. Looking at fostering a system where collaboration can be equipped from day one so that students acquire the aptitude, the attitude to be successful in corporates. So when we go back to campuses and recruit, we do not look for just technology skills. Yes, that's one of the core areas that we look for. But we just do not look at those skills alone. We look for aptitude of people to work in a global environment. We look for people whose enthusiasm to succeed and their aspirations are high. We look for people who can work in teams and make each other successful. So these are some of the traits that we look for in people for the next generation workforce, which is going to be absolutely critical for success for them. And therefore, the learning systems need to also equip students to be trained on those traits or to be exposed to those traits so that they can be more successful when they come into the workforce. So what really is the future of work for corporates? So there are 5 areas that we've listed here which we believe Microsoft follows, and I'm just taking our own example over here. So I talked about a dynamic and very agile workplace today. Norms are being broken every day. Policies cannot be constant. Everything has to change dynamically to suit the needs of the industry. The consumer and the customer always comes first. So when there is a rapid transformation happening in the marketplace, we need to have systems, processes, and people who can change dynamically to that. I gave you an example of how the mobility space actually had created a disruption in the way Microsoft did business. And therefore, we had to change the entire organization's culture. We had to change the behavior of our people. We had to change the way people were actually compensated. And we also had to change the way people were being recruited to actually take advantage of that. And all this had to be done in a very rapid space of time. And this was to make sure that we were innovating at the same pace as what our competitors were doing. The second thing now, which is also becoming very, very critical and very common across most organizations, is that boundaries are being broken. Today, you could have people work out of home. You could have people work in several continents. Teams are spread across multiple countries and multiple continents. So you could have innovation that happens in a particular area, and you could have the work being implemented in another country or continent. India, in Microsoft, we file over 100 patents every year. These are patents done out of research in India, but patents filed in the US and product development and embedding of the product happening in the US. So this is the kind of boundaries that are now getting broken. And that's the new behavior of the workplaces that are there. Just to give you, a very quick example, boundaries not necessarily confined only to geographical countries or continents. Boundaries are also in the way people actually do work in a day-to-day basis. In our offices, we do not have seating which are fixed anymore. We are traditionally used to the mindset of coming to our offices, sitting in a desk or sitting in a cabin, which has now been broken. We now have technology that enables people to sit anywhere and in any place and work. Therefore, collaboration needs, when people meet, when people solve problems, all this has to now adjust to the new ways of doing work, because that is what the Gen Y today expects. Gen Y does not want to be confined to meeting rooms. Gen Y does not want to be confined to sitting in cubicles and thinking through that. They want to be sitting anywhere, and they want to be seen working from there, contributing from there, so that the creativity can flow. The third area, which is also becoming very important for us to look at, which is the data explosion, or making sense of it all, is what I've written there. A massive amount of data that is getting created in the organizations, and therefore we need people who come into the workforce who have the ability and the aptitude to actually make sense of that data, to capture insights. We don't want people who can just come back and code. We want people who can come back and draw insights from the tons of data that is getting generated in organizations, including Microsoft, and how they can actually use that for innovation. So that is another key thing that we look for when we hire people from organizations. And the last that I've listed is informal collaboration. So collaboration today, when people work within organizations, and I'm sure this is true even in institutions, collaboration is no more structured. I talked about an example of meeting rooms, that we don't have meeting rooms anymore. We can sit anywhere and then conduct meetings. We can sit across boundaries. We can use conference calls to do meetings. We can also connect over the web to go back and do meetings. However, there's another important trait that's happening today in organizations, which is how do people use social media more effectively and collaborate, learn, and solve problems. And this is something which is also now needing to translate into educational institutions as well. Students learn from students. And so when the students come into the workforce, they start to learn from each other. We still continue in part with the traditional forms of equipping people, which is trainings. But what we've realized also as a company is that when we put two people together, they learn from each other much faster. So that informal collaboration to learn from each other, to solve problems, to go back and innovate is also creating a huge cultural shift, which is going to be the need of the Gen Y workforce, which is also going to be very critical for institutions to enable, so that that behavior lands from the day one when they come into an institution and can again come back into an organization at a later point in time. So having said that, in terms of how the industry is changing and the needs of the workforce changing, so what do educators need to do? It's a very busy slide. I just wanted to ensure that there are three key things that we do, that I talk about here. Globally, we will need about 263 million students in higher education by 2025. 70 to 80% of that will be technology related, and deep technical skills are required, which today is a gap in our system. Now, when we look at that, what should institutions be really doing to cater to that requirement? There is a shift that is happening in the workplace that I talked about. We know the economic growth is also creating opportunities for innovation. So how can, therefore, institutions start looking at embedding that into the way they actually teach? And that comes from 3 or 4 areas, in my opinion. One, what is the role of the teacher today, or the educator today? It is no more teaching. It is now facilitating. They have to facilitate so that students can learn on their own using content which is available across the entire internet, which could be made relevant for them. Access through devices at anywhere, any place, at any time. And that's really a paradigm shift for us to start looking at in terms of how we can use digital devices, digital literacy, and teachers being the facilitators to actually enable this to happen. Teachers will also have to think about going beyond the traditional curriculum, or institutions will have to think about going beyond the traditional curriculum. We all understand that, with the government and with the boards, making changes in curriculum is not an easy task. They have their own constraints of doing so. But then institutions will have to be agile enough to change curriculum on a real-time basis and ensuring that they meet the needs of the industry. Today, any curriculum beyond 2 to 3 years, in my opinion, is going to be outdated. That's the pace at which technology is changing in the industry. So if we do not make those changes ourselves at the institutional level, and if the educators don't take advantage of that and teach, that is going to be an opportunity that is lost for the next generation workforce. Institutions should also think about how they can enable infrastructure to drive innovation. WhatsApp is a great example of something that was born out of classrooms. Facebook was a great example of something that was born out of an institution. So how can we actually drive industry-oriented innovation out of our educational institutions? And how can we equip our students to be doing that? Microsoft, we have set up 80 innovation centers working with educational institutions across the country, where we are driving this kind of innovation, where we coach students, we coach the educators to actually take advantage of real-life business problems and solve them. And that's something that every education institution, in my opinion, should be doing to create workforce which is real for the next generation. So I briefly talked about enabling students to learn everywhere and the role of the educator in terms of doing that. And so what is really the need of the hour today? The need of the hour today is that we take advantage of all the content that is available on the internet and to make sure that relevant content is made available to students who have a relevant need. And that's the biggest challenge all of us have. Availability of content is not a problem. It is just that how do we make that relevant to the needs of the student, to a specific requirement is where I think as educators and as the industry we need to focus on. So if you went to Khan Academy, you could get all the relevant content that you want that could serve the needs of, let's say, any student in any class. But if the same student wanted to go back and understand what they could do with something that was in the local language, customized for a particular curriculum, where would that student find it from? It's probably available, but it's not made available very easily and it's not made available in a very simple way. And therefore, there is a shift that needs to happen. The shift needs to happen to equip students to start using digital devices such that they can go back and have access to content at some place. The shift also needs to happen that institutions, universities need to come together and start putting the content on cloud-based platforms such that it can be made available and streamed to students on requirement or on demand. There is a lot of work that some of the institutions in the country have started to do that, but I guess there needs to be a larger way for us to get together and make sure that that lands in a way by which every state, every university, every stream of education is able to create content that is relevant to the needs of them. We've been piloting a few, I would say projects where we've given away tablets. We've created content and we've put them onto cloud-based platforms. We made sure that the content is actually now indexed in the right way so that search results actually pop up the right content for the right students. And we've been trying to test that out to see how much of an impact it makes. Probably, the next time if we have an opportunity to come back and address you, we should be in a position to come back and talk to you as to what impact it's actually been creating. And if you do have time, when you walk out, you'll be able to see a stall where we've actually now looked at an offering that's available that can actually mirror what we've been talking about over here. So very briefly, what do we do in education? And I'm not going to take too much time on this. Education for us, as I mentioned, is a very strategic area where we don't look at this as just being a product that we sell to the market. We do have offerings with Windows and what we call as Office 365, which is a set of services that we offer for students and for educators. Some of it free and some of it at virtually highly discounted prices. And the objective is to ensure that we provide them with the technology and the platforms that people can use in institutions. But besides that, we focus on three core pillars. The three core pillars that we focus on are: one, how do we enable educators to become more digitally aware? Since the last 14 years in the country that we've been doing activities in education, we've trained over 760,000 teachers in both the higher education as well as in the school education space on digital literacy. Every year when teacher awards are announced by various forums, we do have at least 50% of those students who've been trained by us who actually receive those awards, and that's a proud moment for us. And those 760,000 teachers, we believe in turn have impacted about 30 to 40 million students in various capacities. So that's a big area of focus that we go back and ensure that educators are trained on being more digitally literate. The second area that we focus on is we provide access to some of our technologies at virtually no cost to drive innovation. So programs such as DreamSpark that you see here are areas by which access to software is available so that students can enable, learn, and create solutions that are real life ready, that are required for the industry. And the last thing that we do, which is the last pillar that we do, is actually around making sure that institutions get what they want, both to create curriculum as well as to get the infrastructure that is required to drive innovation and to create students of the next generation workforce. So these are the three pillars which we drive, which not necessarily are oriented towards driving business, but actually to enable a better economy and better quality of education in the country. So thank you. With that, this was a great opportunity for me to talk briefly about what we do in the education space, the next generation workforce, and our brief thoughts in terms of what we can do to enable educators. I can be reached at this email address and this mobile number, so if there is a requirement that you have, or if there are questions that you have, or more discussions that you need to have, please feel free to reach out to me at this. Thank you very much.